بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين به نستعين. These will be the last talks inshallah, of the Manazil. So we're combining the ninth and tenth stages, which are the stages of haqa'iq or realities, and the stage of the ends, or the nihayat. And the last door in the last stage is the door of tawheed, of unity. And I think it might be a good point here to reflect on the various talks that we've had. I've checked that we've been going on actually since October, so it's quite a long time. And I think that I'm sure all of you have either been involved with this on a regular basis or have dipped into it from time to time, would have formed a type of perception as to what is this all about and how useful it is for those on the spiritual path, for wayfarers. And I'm sure also, and I repeat this nearly every time, is that this is not really a formalistic program which has a definite beginning and end. It's not like learning some kind of sport or learning some kind of... It is to do with, ultimately, it's to do with changing your perceptions. It's to do ultimately with having the wherewithals to be able to acknowledge, first of all, that inner realities are subject or are determined by a different set of forces, a different set of perceptions and insights than the outer world. And because we are and we have been immersed in the outer world from the day that we were born until the day that we depart, it is natural that the stimuli of the material world, of the physical world, of the mental and psychic world also prevail. And through a process of repetition, through the process of continuous immersion, one becomes established, as it were, in a way of looking at things which may be even unconscious. We may strive not to give it an exclusivity, but it becomes, in fact, the way that we determine what reality is. And these stages are in fact designed to, I believe, create the circumstances where you can, as it were, unpack yourself or unpackage yourself, to go into the basic components of self and then reassemble them in ways that are more pertinent when it comes to dealing with inner reality. So the process is not really one simply of confirming and verifying. It is also a process where we disconnect and unlearn. Not disconnect and unlearn in the sense of abandonment of all knowledge of the way in which outer physical realities order themselves. No. If we do that, then we become, as it were, unbalanced once more. You're not able then to deal with outer realities through simply an inner preference for a different set of rules. Inner perceptions do not necessarily give you the tools in which to act in the outer realm. So the unlearning and disconnecting is only for you to be allowed to confirm and verify, and then to reach a certain equilibrium between the two. But it is essential that the basic component blocks, as it were, of the inner world, the inner realities, are unbundled, recognized, and then reassembled in ways that you can relate to them and perceive them, that are internally consistent. And that is when I think the real gains, success would come from this and other spiritual insights. This certainly applies to the works of, for example, Ibn Abdulla, the maxims of Ibn Ata'Allah. It works in the case of the writings of Ibn Arabi. And nearly all the spiritual masters of the great period of Islamic effulgence, spiritual effulgence, require that you develop these tools of inner perception for you to be able to take maximum advantage of them. And I compare really the forces that hold the spiritual realm. They're sort of analogous to the forces that hold the outer world. The forces, the main forces of the cosmos, as far as I know, are the four major forces of gravity, electromagnetism, the weak nuclear force, and the strong nuclear force. If you relate all matter to these forces, you can unbundle them and unpack them and be able to assess and research the components which constitutes material reality. And the forces that basically, the inverse forces that create the circumstances whereby we perceive subtler realms, these forces also need to be unbundled. And I've mentioned a few of them, which can be extremely powerful, as powerful as a strong nuclear force that keeps the electrons and protons and neutrons together. These forces keep your sense of identity together. And therefore, when you have to unbundle them or unpack them, you run a very, very serious risk. Well, first of all, you have to exert a great deal of energy to do that. You have to exert a huge amount of energy to split an atom. And similarly, you have to exert a great deal of energy to unbundle the components of the individuated self, consciousness. You have to overcome the understanding of consciousness that is rooted in the material. You have to go beyond the mind, as it were. We filter all experiences through our mind. You have to go beyond intellect, beyond your own sense of individual autonomy, and so on. And I think this is what this is all about. It's obviously written in a 12th century language, so it might not necessarily appeal to a contemporary audience, but at the heart of it, the Manazil, the stations, is basically a process of regaining the understanding of the spiritual realm by overcoming the forces that tend to, or that do, veil and camouflage it. And these forces, as I said, are very powerful. I mean, the force of mind, for example, or your own awareness of yourself. And therefore you filter all your experiences through these elements. And if you're not very careful about it, if it's not done through a sort of a form like this, with some guidance and some direction and orientation, if you do it sort of like freelancer, it can be really quite harrowing, because you can end up questioning the basic elements of your identity. And if you're not properly equipped, by both having the outer senses in balance, as well as approaching this in a measured, directed way, you may end up with a kind of internal chain reaction that goes wrong, like in the atomic world. So it is really, I think, as simple and as complex as that. But it requires the acquisition of a new way of perceiving, a new way of experiencing that are in accordance with the subtler realities. And if you approach the subtler realities, and that's what I think Ansari says time and time again, that's why he has these gradations from the common to the elite to the elite to the elite. It is really to do with the gradations that the Wayfarer experiences, if one is true and genuine in the quest. The realm of the unseen, and here I've chosen another word because the Quran talks about the ghaib. The ghaib in many ways is not so much the unseen. The unseen has having different connotations. A better way of expressing it is maybe the absent or the unexperienced. It is a realm that is awaiting your discovery. It is not something that you have to sort of put on the right filters. It is a realm that's there. It's a real realm, but you don't experience it. It's absent from your daily experience. And the word ghaib, which has been frequently translated as the unseen, is in fact better expressed as the world or the realm of the unexperienced. It has a reality, but its potential only becomes real if one realizes it in yourself. So its reality comes into existence as you approach it. It approaches you. So it is a process of, I call it the ungluing of the bonds that gives a kind of reality to a person. And the mark, finally, I think, of the true, I call it the wayfarer for the lack of a better word, or of wayfaring, is the ease with which we deal with and balance the gross material world with the subtle realms, using the right tools, the appropriate tools, in each context. Inner abandonment and absolute freedom, joined with the determined outer action and ethical conduct. And as we come to the last stages, these are the stages of very, very realized mastery. So I might be somewhere discover all the veils have been lifted. And someone asked me whether are these the writings of sort of an academic or a person who sits there and tries to theorize about these things and tries to express them in ways that are accessible. I think they are really, they are both instantaneous flashes. They have to be, for them to have a reality beyond just a structure and beyond the doctrine. There have to be flashes that are experienced by the person. And this experience then, of course, is rendered in paper. Somebody has to write it out. Somebody has to set it out in ways that are, comprehensible. And I say that really quite, I affirm that, because there are some people like, for example, Abdulla Nifari, who is one of the greatest spiritual masters in Islam, was not able to translate his flashes into comprehensible language. So a lot of it is, if we have time, inshallah, in the future, we'll talk about it. A lot of it becomes not gibberish, but it's such a contorted spiritual state, because you're trying to describe a continent that others have not seen. It's like Columbus when he came back. He tried to describe to Queen Isabel what's going on there, and people do not really quite relate with different birds, different fauna, different flora, and so on. In this case, in the case of Ansari, I think his flashes were filtered, and his sort of ecstatic states were then filtered through a kind of sobriety, which he rendered in a quite an interesting and accessible doctrinal way. So they are both flashes, therefore they have to be real. Therefore we're not talking about a theoretical statement by a professor, but we're talking about the experiences of a true master that are then rendered in ways that are accessible and then it's recorded in ways that are comprehensible. So we come to these last two stages, and I've tried to combine them and make them more useful. Usually I sort of elaborate a bit more, but I think at this stage, because I have to relate to you what I've read rather than what I've experienced, so it has to be a bit summarized in some extent. There are flashes here and there, but these are established states and stations of people who are, I think, at the highest levels in a sight. So the first door of the stage of the haqa'iq, of the realities, is the door of unveiling, or kashaf. And here, I shall read the Quranic ayats without the harakat, because the harakat are not here. So if I'm mistaken, then please don't mind and correct me, or Munia, or Mahmoud, or whoever it is. The first ayah of the door of unveiling is, and he revealed to his servant what he revealed. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, فَأُوحَى إِلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ مَا أُوحَى. So what is unveiling? This is a mixture of Ansari and myself. That unveiling is a knowledge that is implanted in the Wayfarer's heart, that shows the Wayfarer the wonders of what is being witnessed. It is when you remove the veil, or kashf al-mahjub, as they say, what you see behind it, that is the truth and realities, is so powerful and so true. It's an astonishing sight. So unveiling is when what is seen astonishes all the time, continuously, because it shows basically the bounties and perfections, the wahab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the kamal. It shows the perfection of everything. That the instant, you see things in terms of instants, in terms of lahab, in terms of moments. And the past, the entire experience of the universe, as it were, from pre-time to now, and what's going to emerge from this moment to the future, sort of unveils in front of you. And of course, the highest form of unveiling, as that the human being has experienced, is what the Prophet ﷺ did when he experienced the last stage, as it were, the low tree of the furthest point. And this is where the ayah comes from, Surah Al-Najm, فَأُوحَى إِلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ مَا أُوحَى. It is where, beyond that, of course, the individual, the autonomy of the individual disintegrates, because you have no reality, as it were. Even your shadow disappears. So this is the highest form of unveiling, and whether anybody else, apart from prophets, can experience this kind of instantaneous recognition of reality when you witness it. It's a continuous astonishment. From unveiling, of course, you go beyond sight into mushahada, which is a very high form of seeing. And Ansari starts with a Quranic ayah, and this is a reminder to one possessed of mind, or one who hears attentively and bears witness. This comes from Surah Qaf, I believe. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إن في ذلك لذكرى لمن كان له قلب أو ألقي السمع وهو شهيد. So it is when you seeing in this sense is you don't witness, but you witness the reality of the matter rather than the apparent unfolding of the event. You see the forms in which events or realities are manifested, but you bore into them, as it were. And here Ansari puts it after unveiling. I think it should precede it, actually, because it's a difference between the confirming reality and understanding its meaning. When you see something with this kind of laser vision, you see into its meaning rather than into its form. So in some ways it is, I suppose, necessary for you to get the full import of the unveiling. And when that happens, you start sort of pondering or reflecting in a pleasant way on mu'ayyan, as the Quran says. This is the third door, Bab al-Mu'ayyan. Have you not seen how your Lord had stretched the shadow? And here it is, again, it's I don't want to be discourteous about this debate. I'm trying to impute for myself what I have not been able to experience. But what I understand it to be is when the stretching of the shadows, when you see the shadows on the time when the sun moves, as the earth moves, the sun's shadow, the shadow that light casts, stretches and shrinks. And I mean, ultimately, it is this apparent change in movement and the manifestation of it. When you ponder, it is really nothing but the sun experienced in different ways, or the light experienced in different ways. So, pondering is to relate whatever one witnesses and sees in a state of unveiling to the source of it, to the reality of it, to the light behind it. And this is the door of al-hayat, as he calls it, the door of life itself. And bringing the human being in a spiritual potential back to life. Back to life in the sense of developing the faculties and the spirit and the breath that allows you to deal with the inner world is what life means here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَيِّتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ. Or he who had been dead, and we brought him into life. It is a life that comes about as you unbundle yourself and reconfigure it. It's a different kind of life. The breath of the outer life comes when you're born, and it departs when you physically depart. But the breath of inner life is when you unglue the components that have blocked your true vision. So once these are unglued and reconfigured, then life comes into being again. And this is a kind of life you don't want to lose the capacities inherent in that life. You don't want to see it dissipate from you. And at the initial phases of it, there's a fear that you might lose it. There's a fear that you might lose the possibility of experiencing this kind of powerful inner side. But then as you establish yourself, as one is established in this condition, the life becomes the life of seeing unity, seeing around you the gatheredness of it all. And then ultimately, in the final stages of life, as I assume Ansari was, it is life of sheer existence. Existence, not just the spiritual breath that gives you life, but this sheer knowledge that you're only a reflection of true being, which is life of truth, he says. Then we move on to the door of constriction, or we've experienced that before, but in a different stage. At this stage of the highest realization, the kind of constriction that comes is actually this force of being drawn to the divine presence pulls you. And it is not so much a kind of pulverizing force, but it is more akin to being covered, protected by your knowledge for your knowledge, by Allah's might, rather than a force that crushes or smothers you. And it is a way of protecting the realized wayfarer from others. Not physically from others, but by not letting his state or his or her state or condition be others are aware of it. because they will either resent it or do not understand it, and it might cause a great friction. So it is a form by which your true condition by Allah's mercy is covered from others. And with qabd, with constriction, there's another door opens, the door of expansion. And the door of expansion has other features to it. You become, as it were, immersed in a sense of unlimited potential. Again, in the physical world, there are states and conditions, some of them, I suppose, chemically induced, where you feel that you are in this unlimited. One feels that one is unlimited potential, but it's a false kind of security. It's a false kind of expansiveness. The expansiveness that comes from the sense of the enormous potential that is open to you is a hal, is a state that can be also confirmed as a permanent feature, and it allows you constantly to be in a state of great optimism, of great, and you see in front of you vistas opening, and will constantly unfold, constantly. So, at the final stage, of course, it is the kind of permanent stage of expansiveness, of seeing only the good, seeing only the true manifestations of the names as they unfold, and the enormous potential, or the knowledge of the enormous potential that brings. And this can cause you great elation and opens up the door of, I call it drunkenness, it's also called intoxication. It's obviously spiritual. And where the bounds that appear to dissolve can become ecstatic. So everything around you becomes unbounded. Everything is immersed in the ocean of potential. All potentials can happen. It becomes like an ocean of delight. Your patience, your constriction, everything is forgotten, as it were, in the joy of wandering. And this is also a very dangerous state. Ansari guards against it, and those who've had these glimpses, I also advise they should be guarding against it too, because these are when bounded utterances, shathat, as they say, happen. And shathat are sort of ecstatic statements that go sometimes beyond the realm of the permissible from the Sharia point of view, and can lead to terrible. It's very rare these days, but because there aren't that many in the state, I think. But 1,000 years ago, you had people like Khawaja, Sahrawardi al-Maktoud, who made statements and comments that appeared profoundly antithetical to the Sharia. I think I alluded to earlier. They were tried by Sharia, and they were found guilty. And in some cases, they had the correct sentence passed on them. And it's their fault, because when you're in a state of intoxication, you have to bound yourself. Otherwise, you're causing harm to others when you start uttering them, and you cause confusion and mayhem. So it brings us to the next door, which is the door of containment, or the door of sobriety, or sahu. And this is, Ansari says that drunkenness on the journey is towards it. As you're approaching the haq, and you see everything sort of dissolve, all the constraints dissolve, and you reach this ecstatic state. You're going towards the goal. But once you reach the goal, you can't just stop there. Another state kicks in, which is the state of sobriety, or of sahu, where your actions and states and conditions are not towards the truth, but are now by the truth. So it's like sobriety is to expansion, what sahu is to sobriety or sahu is to expansion, what intoxication is to constriction. sober wayfarer travels by the knowledge of the one, but is still dazzled by the light of power and might. And that sometimes brings you to the next stage, which is the state where the veils are removed and the bonds are dissolved. You may reach a state where there's a connectedness, but it's a very dangerous state also. You think now that you are within the divine presence. And it's because you are there, or you think you are there. You think you are now in the circle of proximity. But you have to guard here. Yeah, and you have to guard, and Allah says in the Quran that He warns you of Himself. You better be careful. You don't make any attributions to yourself. That no matter how realized you are, and how many of these veils, or if all of these veils have been removed from you, there is still transcendence. There is still a state of exaltation, which does not belong to you. There are states, names that only belong to Allah, like the One. We cannot be the One. We cannot be the Eternal, the Summit. You cannot be the Singular. It is not something that you can aspire to. And at the door of connection, it is like you can visualize, as it were, the links, but you maintain the courtesy of distance, which is the door of breaking off in facade, which is the last door of this stage. And here, as I mentioned, Allah warns you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa yuhadhirukum Allah nafsahu. And Allah cautions you regarding Himself. So don't go beyond the load tree of the limit. Even if you think you have that state, the highest, the most exalted being, the prophetic being, withdrew from that point. So breaking off is a state or a door of the highest quality, because one's instinct is to move forward, not to retreat. Caution here is absolutely essential. And of course this applies at various degrees to all of us on this path. I mean, it can apply all of these doors have their reality at other stages, but they're put in this order because that's when the sequencing might be most pertinent. But elements of them exist everywhere throughout this journey. So the door of breaking off, that is pulling back in order to maintain the bounds, is essential at all levels of this journey. So we must be alert to Allah's incomparability and not indulge in dangerous fantasies of feeling or believing that by dissolving the veils, by dissolving the boundaries, you have somehow established your unity with the Creator. And this is, again, many people on this path, in the past anyway, have found themselves in the unenviable position of making utterances and statements like Ana al-Haq and so on, which are borderline. So this journey is a journey of not either or, but and both. Nearness, you're near and far. You're proximate, but you recognize the exaltedness of Allah. Yeah, there are many similarities. He's as close to you as your jugular vein, but at the same time, لَيْسَ كَمَثَلِهِ شَيْءٌ. There's nothing that can be compared to him. So this constant balance, this constant act of equilibrium, knowing the median path, the Ummah al-Wasat is the pathway through wayfaring.